Here's Brody Brazil.
In following this Rays situation, I'm obviously paying attention to every single piece of coverage from Florida, whether it's from the local media or, in this case, the national side. Jason Stark from The Athletic, he actually went to Tropicana Field, like boots on the ground. He walked the perimeter to kind of explain in detail what it's actually like to be there right now and kind of what resembles a ghost town or a haunted house or an abandoned mall. Read the piece. I'll link to it down below from The Athletic. But one thing I had no clue, I did not realize this at all, that since the devastation from Hurricane Milton back in October, since the roof has been ripped off, Rays players have actually been back to Tropicana Field for workouts. I would have thought this was entirely taped off. It was entirely off limits, maybe with mold and water damage, and you don't know exactly what you're getting yourself into. Like, I thought nobody besides, professionals and construction workers would be allowed on this site. But it turns out Rays players, again, have been back to Tropicana Field. And wait until you hear what they have to say. That's all part of this article in this video. But the headline reads, "A trek to Tropicana Field, baseball's haunted house, blue skies, but no Rays." Here's some accounts from Rays players and those involved firsthand. "Sad," said Rays ace Shane McClanahan. "Devastating," said catcher Ben Rortvedt. "Horrible," said the Rays' one-time manager Joe Madden. "I didn't believe it," said their current manager Kevin Cash. Now, these are players and coaches and managers with not necessarily direct connection to St. Pete or Tampa. Like, they're not all necessarily from there. They've played there. They've spent a lot of time there. But a lot of them could just see it as a stadium, a building, a structure, like their workplace. No big deal. If your workplace had something like this happen, maybe you'd say, well, besides my own stuff, I don't really care. But there is a passionate connection with everybody who's played at Tropicana Field or managed a game at Tropicana Field and watching now what it's gone through. Here's what Jason says in the piece. "Less than 2 weeks before opening day, the Trop is all but empty. A few stadium workers come and go. 2 National Disaster Response Team trucks are parked outside, but only minor repairs are underway until the politicians and the Rays get their next move sorted out." And by the way, that next move could come about next week from now. Next Thursday, City Council is supposed to go over the approvals of, $56 million apparently to get the Trop back up to playing standards so that they can complete the lease. 3 more years that the Rays are supposed to play at Tropicana Field. Like, the Rays have kind of put that on the city of St. Pete. And if St. Pete comes through, well, the Rays are kind of obligated to finish out the contract. That contract still exists. It's up to St. Pete to fix the Trop. It's up to the Rays to play at least 3 more years there. Quote, "It reminds me of one of those abandoned malls," Rays closer Pete Fairbanks told me. "It's wild." And again, Fairbanks and some of his teammates have actually been back to Tropicana Field since all of this happened. More on that in just a second. I asked Fairbanks to predict where the Rays will be playing in 2026. Again, they're at Steinbrenner Field, outdoors, the single-A home and the spring training home of the New York Yankees over in Tampa, right next to Raymond James Stadium and the airport for 2025. But where in 2026? Quote, "I don't know," he said, "but if it's going to be the Trop, there needs to be something to cover it before it rains, like in the summer months. If it's not covered by the start of the rainy season in some capacity, all bets are off. There aren't enough ServPro trucks in Central Florida to restore what could start growing in there." ServPro, as in, they come in and fix water damage. You've seen that company before. Not enough ServPro trucks in Central Florida to restore what could start growing in there. That's gross, he said, if it keeps getting wetter and wetter. And yeah, there's no roof on the place and there's no protecting what should be protected inside. Those who painted that picture best were members of a small group of Rays pitchers who were allowed to throw and work out in the bowels of the stadium in the offseason. Again, I had no clue this was happening. I'd seen some photos from the inside of Tropicana Field on social media, maybe that were or were not meant to be shared, but I didn't realize that people were actually going there to work out. It'd be one thing if it was, hey, come inside, take a photo, see what it's like, and then get out of here. Players were actually allowed back to go in and use the facilities and work out. The field itself, battered by the elements and with no drainage system to cope with any of that, was off limits. Okay, so some parts were deemed undoable. But the clubhouse, the pitching lab, and the training room were somehow unscathed for now. Quote, "The videos we saw were pretty appalling," Rortvedt said, "but you don't really get a good feel for it until you're inside. I went there 2 or 3 times in the offseason." Oh, 2 or 3 times. "It's crazy," he said. "I went there on a stormy day too, so the whole field was flooded. So it was a little extra crazy." And this is something I think a lot of people just don't realize. Why can't you play games at the Trop with no roof? Isn't it still a stadium? It just doesn't have a roof. It has no drainage. It is basically like a bucket that you leave outside your house in the rain. What happens after it rains in that bucket? The bucket gets full. There's no way for the water to get out. That is exactly what that stadium is like right now. Fairbanks was one of 3 pitchers, along with starter Ryan Pepio and reliever Kevin Kelly, who visited the Trop regularly in January to get rolling on their pre-camp throwing program. Wow, regular visits? Quote, "At that point, underneath the ballpark was fine," Fairbanks said. "Now, underneath may not be as fine given that we're kind of hitting the rainy season and there's no lid on the pot, right? So I think the pot is probably just kind of filled with water. But the locker room and training room and everything were fine initially, and then the rain started. And it's like when you pour water down your roof when it gets a leak. All of a sudden, it's going to start showing up in interesting spots, whether it's AC vents or light fixtures, etc. Water has its way of finding its way back to the ground. Our locker room found that out after a storm sometime in January. Then it felt like we were in a splash pad. Gross. And wait until it gets hot and humid and wet. And things start to go and grow. So this paints a pretty bleak picture of what it's actually like at Tropicana Field. And to nobody's surprise, like they've gone through this, and that's why the estimated cost is like $56 to $60 million. That's why this isn't just a, hey, throw the roof back on, it's all done, we'll vacuum everything out, we'll bring a shop vac in. Oh, no. Like there is some real serious damage done here. And I mean, what happens if this doesn't get approved and fixed in the spring months? In the summer months, we get back into hurricane season all over again. I've heard estimates that it takes anywhere between 9 and 12 months to actually do all this work and potentially be ready for the start of the 2026 season. I just found this great that Jason Stark actually went to the stadium, actually walked the perimeter of this facility. Again, I'll link to his article down below. Highly encourage you to check it out. But these are things that I did not know about at least the Tropicana Field part of the Rays situation. Let me know what you think about all this in the comments section below. While you're down there, thumbs up on this video. Greatly helps me, this video, and this channel. And one more thing, don't forget to hit that subscribe button down there so I can definitely see you back here next time.